Is this Australia's best driving EV? Well, today we're gonna find out. This is the MG4 Essence 64. So we have a very extensive review of this car already, but today I'm gonna tell you why it's my favorite EV on the market in Australia today. In this video, we're gonna look at everything to do with the MG4 Essence 64 and what you need to know if you're thinking about buying one. We'll look at the interior, look at technologies, look at the boot, look at how the car drives on the road, and of course talk about safety while we're at it. But before we get started, make sure you like and subscribe to Chasing Cars. Chasing Cars, honest reviews of your next car. Brought to you by Budget Direct. So on the design front, what do I think about the MG4? Well, in black, it's not particularly impressive and not great in Australian summers. It's very hot today and we've been feeling it driving around in this MG4. It does have some great features such as LED headlights and LED tail lights. It also has 18-inch aero wheels, which do help somewhat with aerodynamics. And all in all, I think it's a pretty smart looking car and not overly styled like a lot of other electric vehicles. So what's the MG4 Essence like on the inside? Well, a lot of people will try and tell you that MGs are cheap and nasty, but those days are over. This MG4 feels pretty premium inside. And starting with the premium stuff, well, this steering wheel, yes, it's got a flat bottom and a flat top. It's actually really good to use and it feels premium, like something out of a more expensive European car. The only downside is that the instrument buttons on the steering wheel are a little bit confusing and they don't really tell you which way is volume up or volume down. You sort of just got to work it out. Now, the seats are very good. They are cloth and also PU leather, which means not real leather. They're polyurethane leather or imitation seats. But they are very comfortable, supportive, and they sort of hold you in even if you're whipping around some corners. As for technology, front and center is a 10.25-inch touchscreen that runs wired Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. The infotainment works pretty well, however, the climate control is put into the screen, which is a bit of a shame. The 7-inch instrument cluster is pretty good. It's a little bit on the small side, but it certainly gets the job done and has a pretty cool readout showing you all the cars around you with the radar. One little annoyance with the interior, it's a very small thing, but this center console that comes out with the drive mode selector on it, it sort of runs into your knee and it's kind of very hard plastic. It gets a little bit uncomfortable after you've been driving for a while. What else is happening in the interior? Well, we've got two cup holders down here. We've got a pretty large bin to store phones, or you maybe even get a small tablet in there too. We've got a USB-C and a USB-A port there, and we've got pretty generous door bins as well. All in all, I think MG's done a pretty good job with this interior. So what's it like for the rear passengers in the back of the MG4? Well, it's not too bad in terms of space. I've got a little bit of knee room here, a little bit of toe room, and not too much headroom, but enough for a couple of adults to sit back here. Probably wouldn't sit back here with a whole bunch of adults for a long period of time. Now, I will note there is one USB-A charging port back here, but there's no rear air vents and there's no cup holders hidden in here either, which is a shame. So now round the back of the MG4, you get a simple manual tailgate, which is fine for this price. Inside you get 350 litres of storage space. And of course you can see there the charging cable for when you need to plug the car in. There's a couple little nooks to either side, and underneath there is no spare wheel at all. Now let's talk running costs for the MG4. To service over 6 years, the MG4 will cost $1,478. Now the MG4 is covered under MG's 7-year unlimited kilometre warranty. However, the battery in this car is also covered for a 7-year, 160,000 kilometre interval. Now you're probably wanting to know just how efficient the MG4 is. Well, this car in particular, it should get around 13 kilowatt hours per 100 combined. However, we were seeing more like 15.4 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. So what is the MG4 like to drive? Well, let me tell you, this is the car's strong suit. It is a really capable and fun piece of machinery to drive day to day. And I've said that before about the MG4 and I'll say it again. This is my favorite driving EV that's currently on sale today in Australia. And that comes down to a few key things. Now, first off, you get that instant electric power thanks to a rear-mounted electric motor that produces 150 kilowatts of power and 250 Newton meters of torque. And yes, those aren't huge numbers, but that does the job just fine. And it feels sort of as fast as like a hot hatch used to be around 5 to 10 years ago. And you've got that instant torque there, so the car sort of feels more powerful than what it really is. Now, driving this car day to day, the MG4 is very capable. It's soft and it's very comfortable, but when you take it into the hills, which I think a lot of people will do with this car, they'll find that it's very enjoyable, very engaging, and that's very odd being an electric car. We think that electric cars aren't going to be fun or exciting, but with the MG4, it's really changing the way people think about electric cars and making them much more enjoyable for the average consumer. Now, speaking of winding roads and going for an adventurous drive, well, the MG4 is very well suited to that. I've spent quite a lot of time in this car over the last few weeks, and it's just very engaging and really fun to drive, and seems to do all the things that a petrol hot hatch would do. And plus, you've got that rear drive motor, which is great in the corners. It pushes you around, there's plenty of grip, and I don't know, I've just been having a lot of fun, and I don't often get that with an electric vehicle of this type. Now, in terms of safety for the MG4, it is very well equipped. It has the MG Pilot system as standard. It includes autonomous emergency braking, lane keep assist, and of course blind spot monitoring as well. In 2022, it received a 5-star ANCAP safety rating, and it did pretty well for adult and child occupant protection. Now, you may be thinking that because this car is a bit of an enthusiast vehicle, I think, in terms of how enjoyable it is to drive, that it won't be very efficient when you do drive it hard, say up a mountain road. But we're getting pretty good figures at the moment, around 15 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. And as I've already talked about in the video, this is the 64 kilowatt hour battery. It is also available with a larger long-range 77 kilowatt hour battery for the Essence 77, but I think this is the real sweet spot in the range. Now, the MG4 has a indicated range of around 500 kilometers, a little bit less than that. When we picked up the car, it was looking at around 450 to 500 kilometers of range. Obviously, that's dependent on what mode you're in, whether you got the aircon running, all those sorts of things. Which is impressive because this car's claim is 445 kilometers on the WLTP cycle. But I guess I can't only talk about the good things, I've got to talk about the bad things too. I wouldn't say they're necessarily bad, but two things I did find with this car was that the rear visibility is pretty average. Looking out through the rear vision mirror there's not a lot of visibility back there. Yes, it's got plenty of safety, this car, but I like being able to see out the rear of the vehicle. Another little gripe that I had with the MG4, it's a very small thing, but this very hard plastic here next to my knee, where it's resting against, it does get a little bit uncomfortable on longer drives. But all in all, the MG4 has really changed the game in terms of electric vehicles and how they drive. With this chassis, with the suspension that it has, and the powertrain, the rear drive powertrain, it's just so astoundingly good, and I'm really confident in saying that this car is, and probably will be for some time, my favorite driving electric vehicle. So what are my honest thoughts on the MG4 Essence 64? Well, for the most part, it is a very excellent vehicle. And the reason for that is it's just so goddamn fun to drive, and I just can't get over that fact. It's really fun on the road, whether it's in the city or up in the mountains. Whatever you choose to do with the MG4, it'll do a pretty good job of it. And I think it's gonna change people's perceptions of the MG brand completely. This is a radical departure for MG, and I'm really happy about it. But the MG4 isn't perfect. There are a few little niggly bits that I do want to raise here about the MG4 that just make it a little bit less than perfect. And that comes down to, one, the center console. It sort of hits your leg really annoyingly. It's a little bit uncomfortable. The rear visibility is pretty average, and I don't really love black cars. I wish this came in the orange. That would have been awesome. All in all, the MG4 is a really good package for the money, and I think some other manufacturers are going to get a little bit nervous about the fact that this car is now on sale. But what do you guys think about the MG4? I want to read about it down in the comment section below, and while you're down there, make sure you like and subscribe to Chasing Cars.